Nike here, and I'm happy to present you with another incredibly overpowered build for Open World Guild Wars 2 group events and even solo play. With the Legendary Armory, I can make a lot more gear sets than I would have been tempted to make before, and so I have a few more Open World videos planned for you if you guys like this series, and I think, based on the analytics I've seen, that people do. One of the original OP Open World builds I shared with you was the Might God Condi Tempest, and while it's still decent, it has suffered a bit of nerfs, and it's not quite the hard carry it once was in Open World. Well, as luck would have it, there is a new Might God in town. In the last balance patch, Staff Mirage was changed to have Alacrity on its ambush skill, and share the Alacrity and Might from the ambush skill to 10 players. Even though the Alacrity was nerfed a bit, it's still incredibly powerful, and most players tend to run it in Viper's gear because it's rather face roll way in raids, to get excellent boon coverage and even big damage against confusion vulnerable bosses like Largos and Soulless Horrors. However, as good as it is as a raid build, it has even more potential in the open world. Why is that? Because unlike raids and their 0 toughness requirement, in open world we can run Celestial gear. Why Celestial? In the aforementioned balance patch, Celestial gear was mega buffed to grant boon duration and condi duration. This is a particular build that does condi damage and loves sharing boons. It also is, in the open world, especially in solo situations, you want to be tanky and you want to have sustain. So this gear set, Celestial, is literally perfect for us. So what exactly does this build do? Foremost, we like to use this build because it stacks massive amounts of might, and I mean massive. You can easily upkeep 25 might on 20 or more players all by itself with just this build. That is a super hard carry at large scale events. Access to might stacking, however, isn't quite as rare as it used to be, but rest assured there will be times when you need to hard carry a squad with your might. Additionally, the build puts out a great deal of Alacrity. Alacrity is much more rare in the open world, and this does a great job of pushing it out. And this is sort of where the build pulls away from the Tempest. This build makes more might than the Tempest and makes Alacrity while doing similar levels of DPS. Lastly, this build is incredibly tanky and has massive self-sustain along with incredibly good self-buffing. It's quite literally a hard carry in every sense of the word, and I think you guys are going to like it. So with that said, let's jump into the build and get started. Alright guys, so first up with gear, we are going to run Celestial gear in every slot, and our rune will be Rune of Tormenting. Not only is Tormenting giving us a lot of condi damage and condi duration to our biggest, most important condi, the 6 bonus gives us a bit of healing whenever we inflict Torment, and there is no ICD on that. This build basically inflicts Torment with every attack, and it will definitely heal you more than a small bit. I believe that with the amount of healing power we have, that the Torment rune bonus heals us for quite a bit over 100. I think it might even be 200 to be precise, but that kind of depends on other things. But suffice it to say, it's quite a bit of self-sustain, especially when you have this much HP and this much toughness. That amount of sustain coming in is really quite good. For our weapons, we're going to run 2 staffs, and each staff is going to have Sigil of Bursting and Sigil of Energy. It's very important to have 2 staffs so you can weapon swap, since this build does utilize the energy sigils, and dodging is a key engine to making the build work. And really, again, it's full Celestial in every slot, and the gear is as simple as that, so there's not much to talk about. Let's go into traits, where there is a bit to talk about. Okay, so our traits, we're going to take Dueling, Chaos, and Mirage. In Dueling, we're going to take Phantasmal Fury, Blinding Dissipation, and Ineptitude. The combo of Blinding Dissipation and Ineptitude is something that comes in when we're shattering a lot, especially in the way people play it in raids, to get maximum DPS by stacking as much confusion as possible. I'm not really recommending that we do that, and we'll talk about that more when we get to the gameplay section of the video, but the reason really that we take dueling are for the minor traits. Critical Infusion gives us a very high Vigor uptime. Vigor, as you will see, is a DPS increase for this build, so we like that. Sharper Images gives us a bit of bleeding damage, which is nice. And then Master Fencer is going to give us 100% Fury uptime in this build, which is also nice. So this trait line is basically giving us 2 very big DPS increasing boons for free just by having it equipped. In Chaos, we're going to take Method of Madness, Chaotic Potency, and Bountiful Disillusionment. Bountiful Disillusionment is a nice bonus. It's great to remember that you do get stability when you shatter. If you're ever in a situation where you are, say, at Jack Garrett and you're about to eat a swipe and you don't have stability, you can always hit your shatters and gain stability to eat that. But really, the main selling point of Chaos is, for one, we have Illusionary Membrane, which gives us a massive 10% outgoing Condi damage bonus. Chaotic Potency, which is going to give us a massive amount of Condi damage. And Chaotic Persistence, which is going to give us a massive amount of boon duration and Condi duration. 13%, something like that, to be exact, of each. Those are just 3 powerhouse traits. This build likes Condi damage and it likes boon duration. So these 3 traits are just a powerhouse. Now in Mirage, we take Self-Deception, Desert Distortion, and Infinite Horizon. The point of Self-Deception is that we can create clones whenever we use any of our deceptions. So if you have to shatter, or at the start of a fight when you need to get your clones up, you typically will use your Phantasmal Warlock, and you'll use your Phase Retreat. That only gives you 2, which means that you're going to use Jaunt typically. The Jaunt will then make a 3rd clone, and you'll be up to speed with 3 clones. So that is the benefit of Self-Deception. And if you have to shatter, and you don't have, and your skills are on cooldown, you can maybe use Phase Retreat, and then use Jaunt, and then use your heal skill if it's off cooldown to get you back up. Just, good stuff. Okay, then Desert Distortion. You get to use your ambush skills whenever you gain distortion. That's pretty nice. Not really a huge deal. We don't super care about that. It's whatever. It's better than any of the other alternatives. The real big trait here that we like is Infinite Horizon. What Infinite Horizon does is it makes it so that when you gain Mirage Cloak, which is when you dodge, or when you eat a Mirage Mirror, or when you use your False Oasis, you get Mirage Cloak. Mirage Cloak will make your auto attack turn into an ambush attack, as Mirage players will know. So you can see from the tooltip how much better the ambush attack is than the regular auto attack. Now ignore the boons, because the boons are only the player, but just look at the damage. The Torment is 6 seconds longer on the ambush attack, and the Confusion is a bit better. So you stack a lot more Torment on this build. Your clones will stack a lot more Torment by ambushing. So essentially what Infinite Horizon does, long story short, a big DPS buff, because every time we get our ambush attack, which is very frequently, our clones will also use the ambush attack and will stack quite a bit more Torment. Now, as far as our utility skills in the bar, I talked about it a little bit, but we'll go over them. We have False Oasis, Signet of Midnight, Signet of Domination, Crystal Sands, and Jaunt. Remember, the biggest use of Jaunt is to be able to use it as a deception skill to get us a clone. However, 3 Confusion on bosses that are vulnerable to Confusion is pretty good. The other thing it does is it allows you to reposition. Even if you are knocked down, you can use Jaunt to reposition. So you should really never find yourself out of position while you have Jaunt up. Now, your heal skill, False Oasis, not only will it create a Lesser Chaos Storm, which adds some boons and adds some damage, the real benefit here is it will give you a Mirage Mirror, so you get a free ambush attack out of using it, and you'll see that we use it in the gameplay section. And then Crystal Sands essentially creates a Mirage Mirror where you want it, and you essentially get another ambush attack. So we are trying to maximize our ambush attacks. So yeah, that's it as far as traits and skills go. Let's talk about how the build actually plays. So in truth, this build is very easy to play. There are more try-hard ways to play it that shatter more frequently, but I'm going to advise players to first start by doing a no-shatter rotation, and then if you want to play this build in raids, to switch to going to Snow Crows and checking out the try-hard sort of Cry of Frustration rotation. Additionally, I can only really recommend that Shatter Cry of Frustration rotation in raids because there are bosses that you will play this build on in raids that are particularly vulnerable to confusion, so those extra confusion stacks really add up. But that said, it's not really applicable entirely here because in open world, confusion is rarely so effective. My recommendation to anyone watching this video to play this build in the open world is not to shatter unless you need the particular utility of that shatter. Essentially, your goal with this build is to have 3 clones active at all times and weapon swap whenever possible to enable you to use your ambush attack after every swap. That's really the only rules. The fastest way to get your clones up at the start of a fight, or if you have to shatter, is to use your Phantasmal Mage, Phase Retreat, and then Jaunt. That will get you 3 clones and up to speed. You are going to run out of dodges, even with Energy Sigil and Vigor, as you power out ambush attacks. So whenever there's a time that you have no dodges available and no weapon swap, you should fill that in with False Oasis and Crystal Sands, which will give you more ambush attacks. So a couple key things to avoid are interrupting your ambush attacks. The ambush attack has a long channel, and it's easy to interrupt it with a weapon swap. Sometimes you can be so concerned with swapping your weapons as fast as possible on cooldown that you actually interrupt an ambush attack that you were trying to cast, and that is a major feels bad situation. I know the rotation looks easy because, well, it is easy. This build is easy to play, very tanky, and 100% ranged, so you should always be able to position well. It is that good. Yeah, and so that's it for the playstyle. I hope that this was simple to learn, and with a little bit of practice, you guys will be up to speed in no time. So, with that said, let's move on. Alright, so before we wrap up, let's talk about food. If you absolutely want to max out on what you're doing, which is mostly the boon spam stuff, the food of choice, the best food for this build, is plates of eggs Benedict. And then for utility, it would be toxic maintenance oil. As you can see from these are going to give you a lot of boon duration and a bit of Condi duration from the eggs Benedict. They're pretty darn good food, and it will max out your boon duration. Very important to have when you're in a large squad and you're the only source of alacrity is to go with the big boon duration and stuff. Now, if you're in a squad that has pretty good boon coverage and everything's good, and you don't really need to worry too much about going all in on boon duration, instead of using the maintenance oil, you can use the focusing crystals to get you a bit more Condi damage. That's always good. No real problem. Whichever one you prefer really matters. All of that said, and I don't normally say this when I'm doing a build guide, this build functions really well without food. So if you're an open worlder and you don't feel like running food, with this build at least, now don't take my advice for any other, don't take this advice for any other build necessarily, but with this build at least, you're 99% or more as effective without food as you are with it. If someone puts down Ascended food and it's got anything to do with condies, yeah, take it. You'll be fine. It won't hurt you. Again, food won't hurt you. But this build in particular, for whatever reason, it functions well without food buffs. You can get away with it. I don't think it's all that important. Mostly because we're already maxing out our Condi damage with Torment, and our Condi duration with Torment, and we already have very high boon duration, so a little bit more boon duration isn't going to make or break anything major. So yeah, this build at least, you don't have to worry about food if you don't want to, only if you want to min-max. So anyway, guys, that about wraps up the guide, and I hope it is sufficient for everyone to get you out there going with the Might God Mirage. I've had an absolute blast playing this build on everything from Shaq Garrett to the Marionette, and I can safely say it carries hard at all of them. And if you gear this build out, you will 100% enjoy it. So lastly, in conclusion, I'd like to chill a bit, ask you to follow me on Twitch and Twitter and all of that stuff, and join the Hardstuck Discord to participate in our guild community. Links to all this stuff is below in the description. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Thanks for watching.